All right, so today we're diving deep into something I think we all care about, right? Helping kids build emotional resilience.
Definitely, it's such a crucial skill for, well, for everyone really, but especially for kids navigating, all the ups and downs.
Totally. And we've got a ton of awesome sources for this deep dive, articles, guides, even some YouTube videos. We're talking top psychologists, practical tips, the whole shebang. So where do we even begin? First things first, what exactly is resilience?
Well, it's definitely not about avoiding hardship altogether. That's just not realistic, right?
Right.
It's more about giving kids the tools to cope, to bounce back when things get tough, to learn and grow from those tough experiences. And the cool thing is, it is a skill. It's not something you're born with or without. It can be developed.
That's actually super encouraging. Like we as parents and teachers can actually do something to help.
Exactly.
Speaking of one of the YouTube videos we watched, that is a great example. It was something about a kid spilling orange juice on their cereal instead of milk.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
And it's like, okay, minor mishap, but it's all about how they react.
Right.
Do they have a meltdown
Huh.
or do they, problem solve, make the best of it?
Right, right. And that's resilience in action,
Yeah,
in those little everyday moments.
totally. And it's not just about spilled cereal, is it?
No way.
I mean, the sources are pretty clear that building resilience has a ton of benefits. Improve mental health, reduce risk of anxiety and depression.
Yeah, it's linked to better problem-solving skills too, even. Like, it helps them academically and socially, not just emotionally.
It's like giving them this superpower to navigate the world.
It really is.
So how do we actually do that? How do we help them build this superpower? What are the sources saying?
Well, one thing that really stood out to me is that we can't just tell kids to be resilient,
Mhm.
We have to model it ourselves. They're always watching, learning from us.
Oh, absolutely.
So if we're freaking out every time something goes wrong,
They'll probably do the same.
yeah, exactly.
There was this one YouTube video, I think it was called Mental Health Lesson, Tennis Ball Tosses Resiliency.
Yeah.
And they had this really cool visual analogy.
Oh, with the tennis ball, right?
Yeah. The teacher is tossing this tennis ball around, and it represents failure. It's going to happen. You're going to drop the ball sometimes. It's not the end of the world.
Right. You just pick it up and try again. Simple as that.
So we model resilience,
Hmm.
and then what lots of the articles talked about open communication, being honest with kids about our own feelings.
Oh, for sure. Like normalizing emotions, showing them healthy ways to deal with stress, disappointment, all that. I remember one article, a parent was saying something like, I had a tough day, I'm feeling overwhelmed, so I'm going for a walk.
Oh, yeah.
It's like just that simple statement can be so powerful and shows the kid it's okay to feel that way. And, here's a healthy way to deal with it.
Okay, so we've got modeling, open communication,
Hmm.
but what about actual tools, like practical things we can give kids to build those emotional muscles?
Well, one that comes to mind is problem-solving skills. Like, instead of just fixing everything for them,
Right.
we can encourage them to think critically, to break down problems, come up with solutions.
Like, hey, you've got this. Let's figure this out together.
Exactly. And celebrating their achievements, too.
Yeah.
Even the small wins. It builds that sense of, hey, I can do this.
So important. And on that note, what about positive self-talk?
Yeah.
Several sources talked about how important that is.
Yeah, helping them reframe those negative thoughts. Instead of, I'm bad at this, it's more like, I'm still learning and I can get better with practice.
Yes. It's all about fostering that growth mindset, that belief that abilities can be developed, and of course we can't forget self-care for us and for them.
Oh, absolutely. Making sure they're getting enough sleep, downtime, doing things they enjoy.
Essential stuff. Now, this is where things get really interesting. A bunch of the sources, including Dr. Amen's YouTube video, they all talked about technology.
Ah, yes.
And it's kind of this double-edged sword, right?
It is. It can be an incredible tool, but also a major source of stress. Dr. Amen was talking about how excessive screen time can actually wear out those pleasure centers in the brain.
Really?
Yeah, and it can increase the risk of depression, ADHD, all that.
Wow. He even shared this anecdote, I don't know if you remember, about a kid whose brain scans showed decreased frontal lobe activity while playing video games.
It's a bit scary, honestly.
It is. Really highlights the importance of setting healthy boundaries around technology.
For sure, like encouraging them to do things that nourish their minds and bodies offline.
Right. And speaking of Dr. Amen, he had this adorable thing he does with his daughter, Chloe. They play this game called Chloe's Game, and they decide if things are good for the brain or bad for the brain.
I love that.
Isn't it cute?
It's such a fun way to get them thinking about health and well-being from a young age.
Totally. And he wasn't just talking about healthy eating and exercise. He
Yeah.
also brought up protecting the brain from things like drugs alcohol, head injuries,
Yeah.
even vaping.
Yeah, that's a big concern these days.
He made it super clear. Vaping is not a healthier alternative to smoking. It can have some serious consequences for brain health.
It's so important to have those conversations, give them the facts so they can make informed choices.
Absolutely. Now, another fascinating concept Dr. Amen talked about in his interview with Jay Shetty was the love and logic parenting approach. Have you heard of this?
I have, yeah. It's about letting kids experience the natural consequences of their actions, right?
Exactly. Within safe boundaries, of course. But the idea is to teach responsibility by letting them make their own choices and experience the outcomes, both the good and the bad.
Right. So instead of rescuing them from every mistake.
We give them the space to learn from it.
I like that.
Dr. Amen gave an example of his daughter, Chloe, struggling with homework. And instead of battling with her, his wife actually stopped asking her to do it.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they basically gave her the choice. Explained she's responsible for her own education. If she chooses not to do her homework, she'll face the consequences at school.
That's pretty brave. Did it work?
It did. She ended up doing her homework not because her parents were forcing her, but because she realized she actually cared about her education, didn't want to deal with the negative consequences.
Wow. So it's less about controlling them and more about empowering them to make those choices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What are your initial thoughts on this whole love and logic thing?
I think it's interesting. I see the value in giving kids autonomy, letting them learn from their mistakes.
Yeah.
But I do wonder about the potential downsides. Like, what if their choices consistently lead to negative consequences? At what point do we step in?
Right. It's definitely a balancing act
Mm-hmm.
and probably needs to be adjusted depending on the kid, the situation, all that.
Definitely.
And I think that highlights a really important point. Building resilience is not some like one-time thing.
Oh, absolutely not.
It's a journey, an
Sure.
ongoing process.
It is. It takes time, patience, consistency.
Totally.
Mm.
All right, so we've laid some groundwork here. We've got modeling resilience, open communication, problem-solving skills, positive self-talk, self-care, healthy boundaries with technology, and even this intriguing love and logic approach. But there's so much more to unpack.
There is. And I'm excited to dive deeper into some of those other strategies, especially those focusing on self-care and resilience for us as parents and teachers. Because we need it too, right?
Oh, for sure. We can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
All right, so let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and explore even more ways to build that inner strength, not just in kids, but in ourselves as well.
You know, one thing that keeps coming up in these sources, and we haven't really touched on it yet, is the importance of self-care for us, for adults.
Oh, absolutely.
Hmm.
Especially for parents and teachers. We give so much, it's easy to forget about taking care of ourselves.
Right. And one source, it actually called it the oxygen mask principle. You know, on an airplane.
Get your own mask on first.
Exactly. If we're running on empty, we can't help anyone, right?
Totally makes sense.
And self-care doesn't have to be this big, elaborate thing. It can be as simple as like 5 minutes of meditation or a walk around the block, just something to recharge.
Even just saying no sometimes.
Yeah.
We can't do everything. Setting boundaries is important.
Oh, for sure. And another thing, I think it's crucial for adults too, challenging those negative thought patterns. You know, that voice in your head that's always like, you're not good enough or you can't do this.
Hey, tell me about it. Those voices can be loud.
They can, but we can learn to like hit the mute button. Sometimes that means reaching out for support too, whether it's a therapist or a friend.
No shame in asking for help. One of the YouTube videos we watched, How to Build Resilience in Children, 8 Tips for Parents and Carers, it really emphasized having those connections with caring adults.
So important. It's about having that network, knowing you're not alone. And it's not just about receiving support, it's about giving it too. Helping others actually helps build our own resilience.
It's true. Gives you a sense of purpose, you know. Speaking of purpose, several sources talked about setting realistic goals, not just for kids, for ourselves too.
Right, because it's so easy to get caught up in that do it all, have it all mentality, but that just leads to burnout.
And celebrating those small wins along the way, even if we don't reach some huge goal, you know, just acknowledging the effort, the progress.
Keeps you motivated.
Exactly. And that brings me back to embracing failure, something we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. It's not about being perfect. It's about learning from mistakes, keeping growing.
Shifting that mindset from, oh, this is a disaster, to, okay, what did I learn? What can I do differently next time?
Yes. Finding those silver linings.
Dr. Amen said something in his video that really stuck with me. Mentally strong parents ultimately raise mentally strong kids.
So true. Actions speak louder than words.
And it's okay to not be perfect. We all make mistakes. What matters is owning them, apologizing when we need to.
And showing kids that it's okay to be human.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Amen was also really big on brain health. Like, taking care of our brains isn't just about mental well-being. It affects our physical health, too.
He had some great tips. Eating well, sleep, exercise, even certain supplements. Remember Chloe's game?
Oh, yeah. Deciding if things are good for the brain or bad for the brain.
Exactly. We can do that for ourselves, too. Are our choices nourishing our brains or, are they draining them?
It's a good reminder to be mindful.
It is. And of course, those conversations with kids are so important about drugs, alcohol, screen time.
Giving them the facts so they can make healthy choices.
Right. It's about protecting them and teaching them how to nurture their well-being.
Setting those limits, encouraging physical activity, all that good stuff.
It's an investment, really, in their future.
And speaking of building a foundation, several sources also mention the importance of gratitude.
Ah, yes. Teaching kids to appreciate what they have, it can have such a positive impact.
There's a lot of research on it, actually. Gratitude can improve mood, reduce stress.
It's like we're training our brains to look for the positive.
Exactly. And there's simple ways to do it, like a gratitude journal, or just sharing something they're thankful for at dinner.
Making it a part of their routine. I love that.
Yeah, creating that culture of appreciation. And as we're talking about all these strategies, it's important to remember there's no one right way to build resilience.
Oh, absolutely. Every child is different.
Different personalities, needs, learning styles.
We have to be flexible, adaptable, trust our instincts.
Meeting them where they are.
One thing that really stood out to me in the article, Building Emotional Resilience in Children, a guide for parents, was the power of a stable, supportive home environment.
Makes sense. When kids feel safe and loved, they're more likely to develop that inner strength.
It's about creating that foundation of stability, knowing they have a safe haven.
And it's not just physical safety, it's emotional safety too.
Right.
Exactly.
Where they can express themselves without judgment.
Feeling that sense of belonging.
And that sense of belonging can extend beyond the family, too. School, sports teams, clubs.
Being part of a community.
It gives them a sense of purpose.
And it's not just about the quantity of connections, it's about the quality.
Right. It's about having those close, meaningful relationships, people they can truly rely on.
And mentors. Having someone they look up to, someone who can guide them.
Mentors can be so influential. And it doesn't always have to be an adult. Sometimes it's an older sibling, a friend.
Someone who can offer a different perspective.
Exactly. Now, as we talk about all this, it's important to remember, we're not trying to create kids who just bottle up their emotions.
Oh, definitely not. Resilience isn't about being stoic.
Right. It's about having the emotional intelligence to understand and manage those feelings.
To cope effectively without falling apart.
Finding that balance between strength and vulnerability.
I like that. And so many of the sources talked about self-regulation skills.
Such a key part of resilience. Learning to manage impulses, control emotions.
Making thoughtful choices even when you're stressed or upset.
Exactly. And there's so many tools for that. Deep breathing exercises, mindfulness, even things like progressive muscle relaxation.
Oh, I love that one.
It's so simple but effective.
And even young kids can learn these techniques.
Absolutely. We can make it fun, make it part of their routine. It's like we're giving them a superpower.
The power to control their reactions.
I love that. And as we think about all of this, we have to remember there's no one-size-fits-all approach. What works for one child might not work for another.
So true.
We have to be flexible, adaptive, responsive to their individual needs.
Meeting them where they are.
It really is all about that individual journey. And, speaking of journeys, it made me think about something we haven't really talked about directly yet. A lot of the sources brought up this idea of helping kids develop a strong sense of purpose.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I can see how having a purpose, like a driving force, would help them, especially when facing challenges.
It's about helping them find what they're passionate about, what gives their life meaning, And that might change over time, what they're passionate about.
Right.
But the important thing is that they have something that motivates them, that keeps them going when things get tough.
And sometimes I think that sense of purpose comes from facing those challenges.
Yeah.
Like overcoming an obstacle and realizing, hey, I'm stronger than I thought.
Absolutely. Adversity can really push us to discover our potential.
It's like that saying, the obstacle is the way.
Exactly. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm realizing how connected all these different strategies are.
Me too. Like, we've been weaving this tapestry, right? with all these different threads. Connection, self-care, growth mindset, purpose, even those brain-boosting habits we talked about.
It's a tapestry that we can all be a part of, both in our own lives and in the lives of the kids we care for.
I love that. So, as we come to the end of this deep dive, I hope you're feeling inspired, ready to take action.
I hope so too.
We've explored so many tools and strategies for building resilience, not just in kids, but in ourselves too. And remember, it's a journey. It's ongoing.
Be patient with yourself. Embrace those challenges.
Keep growing.
And remember, you're not alone in this.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into building emotional resilience. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep nurturing that incredible resilience within you.